Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We're ready to get started. Maseches Kesubos, Daf Ayin Zayin. And as you can see on the bottom of the next Amud, we'll be ending this parak Yirtzeh Hashem today. Tomorrow, we're really going to push forward and try to do close to 2 blot. I haven't figured out Friday yet because not only is it a very long slichos, but there's a bris, so I have to figure out exactly when we're going to do that. Worst case scenario, we'll be a little bit behind. I have no other way to really solve for it, but we'll figure it out. We're at the second Mishnah on the page, just about halfway down, 4 lines before the wide lines on Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. And the Mishnah opens, Ve'elu shekofen oso lehotzi. What types of mumin are grounds for divorce from the husband's side of things? So says the Gemara, mukashchin, if a husband is covered in boils, ubal polifos, we'll see in the Gemara what that means. V'hamekamet, someone who gathers, we'll see what that means. V'hamitzaref nechoshes, someone who works with copper. V'haborsi, someone who is a tanner. If you have these professions, it's grounds for divorce. Okay, a lot of them had strong smells, as we'll soon see. And not only is it true, bein shahayu ad shalonisu uvein shemi shenisu neldu, it's true in both cases. If you were born with that profession or with those smells, or if you started them after you get married, they're both grounds for divorce. Ve'al kulan, in all of these cases, Amar Reb Meir, afal pisha hisna ima, even though he made a condition with her, I know that I'm working in this field, I'm letting you know, and she says I'm good with it. Still, yechola hisha te'amer svura hayisi shani yechola lekabel. I thought I could handle it. She comes home every day, and he smells like a tanning factory, and it's not very pleasant, to say the least. After a while, she's allowed to say, "I'm sorry, I just can't handle it," and it's divorce with a ksuba.
We now see last night's Gemara.
This was I hadn't learned this Mishnah yet.
Right, it's the washing of the Mishnah, and it is in some cases legitimate.
And if you look at the next sheet on the Mishnah, once she accepts the conditions of the marriage with him smelling the way that he does with his profession, so then chutz mi mukashchin, that's different. Mukashchin is different because when there's tashmish hamita with a mukashchin, it actually damages the skin of the anatomy through tashmish, and that's obviously categorically problematic. In fact, Ma'aseh b'Tzidon, there was a story in the city of Tzidon, beborsi echad, someone who was a tanner, shemes, he died and they had no kids. V'hayelo ach borsi, his brother, was the family business. They were all tanners, so they all had the same smell. Amru chachamim, the chachamim were of the opinion that yechola hisha te'amer, under these circumstances, she's able to say, la'achicha hayisi yechola lekabel, at least your brother was good looking, so I was willing to handle the smell with him. But v'lecha eni yechola lekabel, no thank you, I'd rather get chalitza than yibum. So we had said in our Mishnah that one of the categorical things that a husband has to divorce his wife for was polifos. So it says the Gemara, "My baal polifos." That's a machlokes. Amar Reb Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, reach hachotem, a certain smell that came out of the nose that was very unpleasant. B'masnisa tana reach hapeh. Some say that it's very bad breath. And Ravasi masni ibcha. And according to some, these shitas were reversed, meaning Reb Yehuda, Amar Shmuel says it was reach hapeh, and the Brisa says that it was reach hachotem. Either way, it has to do with some type of very strong odor coming from the ears, nose, and throat, basically. Well, not the ears, I guess, but coming from the face. Not so good. My mekametz, what is this collector? So says the Gemara, machlokas. Amar Rav Yehuda, zeh mekabetz tzoas klavim. That's not a fun job. His job is to clean up after dogs. He runs a kennel, and his job.
Their services.
Huh?
Their services.
I'm sure.
I drove behind a car and looked at my wife.
Oh my gosh.
Her parents must be
so proud. Yeah, one kid's a doctor and one kid's
unbelievable.
Yeah, this is a profession and it ruins a marriage. And if a guy says, you know what, I've been a lawyer for many years at firm X, Y, and Z. Now I want to go take care of dogs and my job is to clean up fecal matter. Done, marriage is over. She can say I'm out and get a ksuba. However, not everyone agrees that that's mekametz. Meisvei, some say mekametz is a borsi, which is a bit of a problem because our Mishnah said borsi was one of the options. Says the Gemara, according to the Brisa that says that mekametz is borsi, l'tameich tikshilach masnisen. If you're saying mekametz is borsi, and mekametz v'amitzaref nechoshes ve'aborsi, so then we're saying the same thing twice. Mekametz and borsi are the same. Says the Gemara, I could answer for that opinion. Bishlama masnisen lo kashya, kan beborsi gadol, kan beborsi katan. And mekametz is one type of borsi, and the borsi is another type of borsi. So that's not a problem. Ela the Rav Yehuda, but according to Rav Yehuda, who's of the opinion that a mekametz is someone who is mekabetz tzoas klavim, someone who cleans up after dogs. Kasha, because the Brisa doesn't agree with him, and Rabbi Yehuda is an Amora. You're not allowed to disagree with the Brisa, so that's a problem. Says the Gemara Tanai, really it's a machlokas and the Tanaim detanya. Mekametz zeborsi v'yeshomrim ze mekametz So as Klavim, there is in fact a source in the Tanaim that supports Rabbi Yehuda. So both of these are valid shitas in regards to what this person might be. We're already catching a theme here. The polyphos has a very bad smell, and the person who takes care of dogs presumably also has a very bad smell. Let's talk about myself for just a moment. Let's say that somebody works on a garbage truck. I was just caught behind the garbage truck yesterday and my vents were open. It's very unpleasant. And if you're standing there 8-hour shift, it's not geshmak. And even if you change your clothes, it's in your skin. It's not, is that grounds for divorce? So it seems to be that there's a machlokas in the Mishnah as to whether or not that would be grounds for divorce. You work at the plantation, whatever that building is on the corner of Howard and McCormick. Very unpleasant. At the 2 dots, 3/4 of the way down, what is this person doing with copper? He's taking a hammer and he's kind of flattening out sheets of copper. No, he's mining copper from the ground. And both of these professions, or what this profession, whichever way we look at it, is problematic. And Tanya Kavase, we have a brisa that supports the latter explanation of Mitzaref Nechoshes, which was that of the Rabbi Bar Chana. This is a person who is mining copper from the ground. The Gemara says 4 lines before the very wide lines, 5 lines actually. Amar Rav. Rav says, "Ha'omer eini zan ve'eini mefarnes." A husband's a jerk. He says, "I'm not going to feed you. I'm not taking care of you." The halacha is yotze v'yitem ksuba. The marriage is over. The second those words leave his mouth, he just ended his own marriage. Got to treat women nicely. So Rav was the one who said this. Rabbi Elazar heard it, and then he quoted it in front of Shmuel, who is Rav's counterpart. Omar, Shmuel responded, "Achsuha sa'are le'Elazar." We should feed barley to Elazar. A little bit of a catchphrase, and he says you misunderstood something. And until that time that we force him to divorce, then we need to feed him. We gotta try and figure things out first. But we have to feed her. In the meantime, it's not just goodbye. He still needs to feed her. He has a chiyuv to feed her. The Beis Din will force him to feed until they get divorced. The Rav, why does Rav say get out right away without even waiting? Because a line we've seen already, Ein Adam Darim Nachash B'Kfifa. We don't live with a snake. She should not be living with this man. If this man is such a jerk that he's saying, "I'm not willing to feed you," the marriage is over. Don't let him feed you in the meantime. Get out, go to a shelter, go to Shalva, go to wherever you need to be. That's not the place to be. Kisalik Reb Zera, when Reb Zera came up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechel Rabbi Yomin bar Yefes, the Yosef Kamar La Mishmei to Rabbi Yochanan. He was quoting this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And Amar Le Al Da Achsu Asar Nalos Rabbi Bavel, for that exact shita, which was the shita of Rav, that we're going to feed you barley, we're going to feed you animal feed. There's something wrong with your shita. Okay. Amar Yehuda Amar Ravasi, excuse me. Ein me'asen ela lepsulos. We only force a relationship to end for a couple that shouldn't have been married in the first place. So this is kind of a practical application. When we have a couple that's in violation of these mumen, violation is the wrong word. When we have a couple where there are these mumen, so what is the din in regards to them getting divorced? Do they have to get divorced? Can they get divorced? So says the Gemara, when do we force it? Only if the relationship is a relationship that shouldn't have happened in the first place. Ki amrisa kami de Shmuel Amar, he said, Kigon almana lekoin gadol, ugrusha v'chalutza lekoin hedyot, mamzer sunesinu leYisrael, bas Yisrael unesinu ulemamzer. Any of these relationships shouldn't have happened in the first place. So when we see a categorical mum in him, the marriage is over, and we really do force the issue. We try to end their marriage. Aval, nasa isha. If a man does marry a woman and it's under the appropriate circumstances, and they've been married for 10 years and they didn't have children. We learned this sugya already. Ein kofino. So there we don't force that person to get a divorce. However, that's subject to a machlokes, because 4 lines from the bottom, Rab Tachlifa bar Avimi Omer Shmuel afilu nasi isha b'shayim ma'yud shana v'lo yalda kofino. So there's a machlokes as to whether or not we do force a couple who's been married for 10 years to get divorced. And obviously, what does this hover upon? It hovers upon the mitzvah deoraisa of Peru or Vu. So we know the Chazon Ish didn't have children, and apparently Rabbi Robinson told me that he knew before he got married that he was likely to not have children. What Rabbi Robinson told me, I don't know. Apparently the story, he knew and that would be one of these 2 shitas. Obviously, the more lenient shita, lenient in regards to the mitzvah of Peru or Vu, which is that they didn't force him to marry somebody else in order to try and have children. It's not elu shekofin oso lahotzi. In the following cases, we force someone to divorce. We had said in our Mishnah, mukashchin ubal polifos. We said a mukashchin, a person with boils, and a person who is a Baal Polyphos, as we said in the beginning of our Mishnah, someone who has a very bad smell out of their nose or out of their mouth. Bishlam ala Ravasi. Ravasi was the first shita on the very long line that we don't force people, because those are cases derabanan tani. Our Mishnah only stipulates cases that are rabbinic in nature, which is again the mukashchin and the Baal Polyphos. And deoraisa loktani, our Mishnah seems to leave out all the cases that are deoraisa. Ela l'Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi, according to Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi, who says that we are kofin for a marriage that's 10 years in and there's no children. Why isn't that included in our Mishnah? Listening to us, so that should have been listed in our Mishnah, because he holds that it is a case of kofin. Obviously, Ravasi doesn't. So because Ravasi is on the other side of the machlokas, we understand why it's not quoted. But according to Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi in the name of Shmuel, that should have been listed in our Mishnah. Why not? Rav Nachman, Lokashya habemili habeshuti. There are different types of ways that we motivate people. One is with words and one is with a stick. So it says Rashi at the very bottom of the page, 4 lines before the bottom of the page, Dibur hamaskal habemili, periya verivya bemili miyasrina. When someone's been married for a long time, we use words. We say, listen, you have a mitzvah deraisa to have children. You've been married a long time. You got married when you're 20, you're 30 now. You have to go find another wife. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that that's what you have to do. However, b'shute lo radin anlei. But when it comes to someone who's struggling with pru or vu, we don't walk over to him and beat him with a cane until he agrees to remarry. Aval hanach, but the other types of movement that we listed in our Mishnah, which is the case of mukashchin and Baal Polyphos and some of the other ones, there, aval hanach b'shute nami radin anlei she'iyafshar lo lekabel, because those cases are a little bit more far removed and they need a little bit more motivating. Probably not something that would go over very well nowadays, but that is what the Gemara says, is a distinction between the cases. And that's why, according to Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi, why this case was not listed in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is only dealing with cases where it's beshute, cases that require a stick, but the cases of pru or vu, where a couple's been married for 10 years and they have yet to have kids, that's not a case that's where we hit with a stick. Says the Gemara, Maskif Rabbi Abba bidvarim lo yusar eved. That's not going to work. The words alone will not chastise someone to the point that they're going to change. We have to hit them with a stick. Says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Abba really, both cases are dealing with where we motivate people with physical harm of some kind. Hasam, in regards to our Mishnah, ki amra havina behadeh shav kinanle, that when she says that she wants to stay with him, we allow her to stay with him. But hacha, in regards to the mitzvah of pru or vu, we don't. Afal gabdo amra havina behadeh, even if she says, I really do prefer to stay with him, lo shav kinanle, we don't allow her to stay, because according to Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi, she's not allowed to stay with him because he has to leave her. He has a mitzvah of pru or vu. Okay. Behari mukashchin, in regards to mukashchin, a man who has boils, the afal gavda amra havina behadei lo shavkinan la. There was one exception in our Mishnah. We had said, remember the case of mukashchin, that a man who has tashmish amita when he's a mukashchin, it's not good for his body because the skin will begin to slough off. So says the Gemara, there lo shavkinan la. We don't allow them to stay together. That's not the Mishnah writes. Chutz mimukashchin mibnei shemimakaso, and the katani hasam, that's still listed in our Mishnah. So says the Gemara, ki amra, if a woman says, Dairna behadeh, I'm still going to live in the same house as him, but besahadeh, I'll do so with Adim who are going to be my apotropos. They're going to live in the apartment with me, and they'll guarantee that we never have tashmish amita, shavkinan la. We allow her to live in that marriage. Why? He can't have children anyways. He's done, because he's not a tashmish amita is damaging for his body. So then she can stay as long as they guarantee to not have tashmish amita. But hacha, in regards to the case of pru or vu, afal gav damar darna behadeh besade lo shavkinala. Even if she says, I want to be married to you, we won't be intimate. What does that have to do with anything? That doesn't solve any problem. He doesn't have a medical issue as it relates to having tashmish amita. You're just not conceiving. So therefore, her staying doesn't help. Tanya. We're going to be learning some agaritas from now until the end of the page. And I'm going to say outright, I don't understand. I understand some of the words, but I don't understand some of the deeper concepts, as you will soon see. Tanya, the Brisa writes 8-9 lines down on Ayin Zayin Amid Beis. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Sachli Zaken Echad Manshi Yerushalayim, Esrim v'Arba Mukeh Shchinhein. There was an elder gentleman, an elder Talmud Chacham from Yerushalayim, who said there's 24 kinds of Mukas Shchin, 24 kinds of boils. V'chulan Amru Chachamim Tashmish Kasha lahen. For all of them, intimacy was difficult for the patient. Ubale Ra'asan, a person who had a type of Mukas Shchin that was called Ra'asan, that was the worst of them all, Kasha Mikulan. How does a person get this disease of Ra'asan, one of these 24 types of Mukashchin? So it says the Gemara, Titania, Hikis Dam Vishimesh, if a person were to have Hakasas Dam, they had bloodletting, and they were immediately intimate. Havian Lo Bonim Vitikin. You'll have children that are Vitikin. Normally we understand Vasikin as old. Rashi at the top of the page, second, Rashi's where Tosfos normally is, because there are no Tosfosim on this page. So on the second line of the outer margin of Rashi, Rashi says, Dibur Hamaskal Vasikin Chaloshim, that they're very weak. Okay, that's part of the bride. So let's continue. Hikizu shnehem v'shimshu. Let's say that both husband and wife went to the bloodletter. They both had bloodletting, and then they had tashmish amita havin labanim ba'alei rasa. That's how you get mukashchin. That's how you bring about this disorder. You can't even bring it about to yourself. You can only bring it about in others. The child will then have that disease. Amar papalo amar nela taimidi. That's only true if you don't eat. Aval taimidi less lanba. But if in fact you eat after the bloodletting, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, and I'm not a scientist. I can't comment on that. Right. I should know about bloodletting. It's true. I know that they use leeches. I think that's about the extent of my bloodletting knowledge. My simone, what are some of the symptoms? Oh, look at this. It's like the WebMD. We have like the WebMD for Mukashchin, for Rasan. So what are some of the simanim, some of the symptoms? Dalfan ene, his eyes water. V'daive nechire, his nostrils drip. He has a runny nose. V'isile rira, he has a very thick phlegm, mipume. And v'ramu didve ilave, there are flies that are all over him. Apparently he puts off some kind of smell. Umayasuse, how does he heal himself? Well, come join me for this concoction. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye Pila Veludna. We take mint and something called wormwood. Girda, we take the bark to agoza, some type of shell from a nut. The girda to ashpecha, it should be ashpecha. And we take the outer covering of a hide. The chalil milka, we take a lily, the flower. Umaschila de dikla sumka, we take the red covering of a date, the covering of a red date, and then we put them all into a pot. Sounds like witchcraft. The shalik lehu behade hadade, we boil them, we cook them up all together in the same pot. And we bring it into a house that's made out of marble. They want the walls to be marble. They want there to be no draft. And if there is no house of marble, then then they have to bring it into a house where the walls are 7 bricks thick and another half of a brick. So it's a very thick house. Again, trying to prevent airflow. We have terminologies for this in the world of those who consume drugs to make the drugs more intensified. The point is we don't want anything to escape. Says the Gemara halfway down, last of the short middle width lines, they pour 300 cups of this on his head, until it weakens the ground of his head, till it weakens the skull of his head. This is brain surgery. We tear open the skull. We take 4 leaves of a myrtle branch. Then we put one under each leg of the little animal that's running around in his head, because that's what the rasan is here, that there's a bug, we would call it today a flesh-eating bacteria, but there's some kind of bug that's in the person's head. And then v'shakil b'tzapsa. Then we take the animal out of his skull with tweezers. V'kalile, and we actually burn the animal. Otherwise, it'll go right back to where it came from. Dilo hadar ilave. No problem. No problem. So that's how we get rid of Ra'asan. So we get Ra'asan with Hakazas Dam, and we remove it with some brain surgery and a concoction in a marble room. Halfway down, second of the wide lines. Machras Rabbi Yochanan, Hizaru mizvuve shel ba'alei Ra'asan. One should be very careful in regards to the flies that fly around the heads of those who have Ra'asan, those who have this type of shchin. Reb Zera lo haba yasi bezike. He wouldn't even sit within their space of their wind, literally their wind. It just means he wouldn't sit around them. Reb Elazar lo ayel be'ahale. He wouldn't even go in their tent. Ravami v'Ravasi lo havu achle mibei deha'imavoa. They wouldn't even eat eggs from that locale. They would really keep a good distance. However, the tzaddik in the room is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi michrach behuv asik b'Torah. He would be all cuddled up with them, and he would sit and learn Torah with them. You want to have a chavrusa with me? They tell these stories about Rav Shaila Karastir, that he would have anyone in his house, fleas, disease, body odor, didn't matter. He would do chesed until the nth degree. So the Gemara says, Omar, what was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's argument that it's reasonable to be exposed to these people? The Torah is considered to be ever so beautiful and gracious. If a person learns Torah and they get some type of chen that overlays on them, agune lo magna, you don't think the Torah is going to protect me? I'm not sitting here being mavatal. I'm sitting here learning. So there's no reason why I shouldn't be protected by the Torah. Good hashkafa with which to go into Rosh Hashanah to know that the Torah protects us. When Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was about to die, the Malach HaMavis was told, Zil avi le'reuse, go do whatever he wants. Give him his final wishes, as we would call it in our parlance. So then the Malach HaMavis appeared to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He says, show me where my place is. He's referring to the next world. Show me what my rank is. What floor am I going to be living on in the next world? No problem. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says back to the Malach HaMavis, Havli Sakinach, give me your knife just in case I get scared along the way. So he agreed. The Malach HaMavis gave his murder weapon. He gave it over to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Malach HaMavis brought him to the precipice of the next world. And when they got there, Dalye kamachvele. Dalye, he picked him up. Kamachvele, he looked over the threshold to look into the next world. Shavar nafalehu gisa. He jumped up and then he fell into the other side. He was alive, but he was now standing in the next world. Nakte bekarna deglime, and the Malach HaMavis was holding onto the corner of his jacket. Amarle beshuasa delo asina. And then he played a halachic card. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi made a neder that he wouldn't come back. So Malach HaMavis is like, what am I supposed to do? Force you? Like, yeah, that's between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes. Amar Kutchabrichu, if in fact he's the type of person who would renege on his shavuas and he would be matir neder, then he should come back to the world as a regular person. Ilo lo nehadar. But if he's someone who would never be matir neder, so then he needs to stay in the next world, v'kach hava, and he stayed in the next world. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know. Right before they separated from one another, the Malach HaMavis said, like, hey, can I get my pocket knife back? Havli sakinai, can I please get my knife back? So lo hava kayayiblei. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's like, listen, I made a big sacrifice here, but I want to keep the knife, so you stop killing people. Nafka baskala. Then a baskal came out from Shammai. Havne hale de misba'a libriasa. Give it back to him. He needs it for the creations. He needs it in order to do his job. He has a responsibility as well, which is that when it's a person's time, so then the Malach HaMavis will take their life, and he uses this knife to separate the soul from the body. Machris Elio Kameh. Now we're back in on the other side of the fence where Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is up in Shamayim, and Elio Navi is there, and he says, Pnumakom lebar levite. Pnumakom lebar levite. He says, make room for Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Make room for him. He's a big chashuv yid. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochanan. They found Rashbi, Rabbi ben Yochai. Excuse me. They found Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and what was he doing? To have a Yosiv al klas asar tachtaki pisa. He was sitting on 13 golden couches. I don't know how you sit on more than one couch, but he was surrounded by 13 golden couches. Amar le, tu bar levi. They've been talking about you up here in heaven. Are you Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? Amar le, hey, I am in fact bar levi, the son of Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Niras hakeshes bi'amecha. And your whole life, did you see a rainbow? So if he Amar lehein, he says, yes, I did see a rainbow. Now, this rainbow is supposed to be indicative of the fact that you're really such a big tzaddik that HaKadosh Baruch Hu never had to warn society that a flood is about to come. So Amar, he says, Im Kain, Reb Shimon ben Yochai says back to him, Im Kain, that there really was a keshes, that you did in fact see a rainbow during your days, then Iyata bar Levi, because bar Levi was such a tzaddik that there was no need for a keshes during those times. And really, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi lied because he wanted to humble himself a little bit. He didn't want to be that guy. He didn't want to say, I'm such a chashuv guy. He didn't want to So hard to understand this Gemara on so many levels. First of all, you're in the next world, so there's no sheker. So what is it? You're allowed to lie if somebody asks you if you saw something. Obviously, you could just lie. So these Gemaras are Omer Dorsheni. They all require a lot of time. Many years ago, when I was in Kolal, in Smicha, I was taking a program on the side called Ner LaElef. And when I was there, by Beryl Gershenfeld, who a lot of people know, he used to give these classes on Agaritas. He'd present the Agarita. Everyone would throw out like 30 questions on the Agarita, like this, like, how can you lie? How are you a physical person in the next world? Go through all of them. And then he'd show like how the Maharal would weave this perfect tapestry around every single issue. So Ayin Sham, I'm sure it exists in Chazal somewhere. I don't know where. We are 3/4 of the way down from the end of the parak on Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Rav Chanina bar Papa shushvine hava. Rav Chanina bar Papa and the Malach HaMaves, they were neighbors. Again, like, what does this mean? They were good friends. Ki Ava Kanicha Nafshe, when it was time for Rav Chanina bar Papa to die, Amru Leila Malach HaMaves Zil Avid Le Reusei, go do the ratzon of that person, or Rav Chanina bar Papa, it's time for him to die. Ozal Lagabe, and he went over to him and he made himself appear. Listen to the language. Ozal Lagabe, first he went over to them and then he made himself appear. So again, these are beyond our pay grade, but the language is important. Omar Le, Rav Chanina bar Papa is a Talmud Chacham, Shavki Tzlasin Yom Ad Nahadr Talmudoi. Give me 30 days to Chazer Shas. It's like Rav Chaim, but 12 times faster, just to do all of Shas. He was doing like 96 blot a day for a month. The Amre, and this is such a beautiful and important line, and we're familiar with this. Ashrei mi shebalakan v'talmudo biyado. As many people say, a famous song made into a Gemara, which is a little bit backwards, but there are people who make those kinds of jokes. Of course, it's good for us to know Torah before we go into the next world. Please God, at 120 years old. So Shavke, so the Malach HaMaves gave Rav Chanina bar Papa 30 days. The Basar Tzlas and Yomin, after 30 days, Azali Schazele, after 30 days, the Malach HaMaves came back to Rav Chanina bar Papa and he appeared to him again. Amar Lei, Rav Chanina bar Papa said, Achvili duchtai, show me my place in heaven. Amar Lei lechai, I'll show it to you just like I did to your friend Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Amar Lei habli sakina, dilma mivasas li beorcha. Give me your knife again, because I know that sometimes people get scared on this pathway.
What is that?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay, fine.
I have no idea.
I'm just not sure. I thought I was missing.
You are missing something. So am I. We're all missing something. This whole Gemara is Omer Dorsheni. Omar Le, he says, you think I'm going to give you my knife the same way I gave it to your friend? You can fool me once, but you're not going to fool me twice. You're not getting my knife. Omar Le, I see Sefer Torah. Do you think that there's anything in here that wasn't fulfilled properly? Omar Le, were you as frum as Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that he was willing to sit with the Mukashchin, this guy who he's dripping out of all of his orifices, and he's sitting there with flies hovering over his head? You know what disease he has because we have the symptoms laid out in the Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi sat and learned with him. Are you that from Rabbi Chanina bar Papa? Probably not. Even so, even though he wasn't quite on that level, and by the way, just an important diuk from the Gemara is that being a tzaddik is the minimums. Keeping halacha is the basics. What we're talking about, the levels of godless, is above that. The levels of godless of the great people is not that they kept halacha. We all have to keep halacha. That's not a chiddush. That's not what makes us unique per se. What makes us unique is what we do within the Dalet Amos Shel Halacha. How kind are we? How thoughtful are we? I started doing this at Brisses now because I'm a kanoi. I'm like becoming more of a kanoi as I get older. And I give this loose translation that, just like the baby reached the milestone of his bris, so to his bar mitzvah and his wedding. But the last blessing is ma'asim tovim, which means good deeds. And don't make any mistake about it. Jewish law nuances everything. Good deeds is not some feel good, just to be good. No, there are halachic parameters, Jewish legal rules of what it means to be good. Give 10% of your charity, but not 20. When you see someone, you have to treat them the same way you treat yourself. What is that? What does that mean in Jewish legal terms? And these are real things. So that's what the Gemara here is telling us, that we have to be, the tzidkus is the basics. We have to keep halacha, that's for sure. But how special we are in that regard is one area, but how much more we can do is still a higher level. Anyways, in regards to Rav Chanina bar Papa, even though he didn't embrace the person who had mukas shchin as a ras on this disease, when he died, When he died, there was a fire that stood between him and the rest of the world. Ugmiri, we have a tradition. Second time, I believe we're seeing this. We only see this fire separating a person who dies from the rest of the world once or twice in a generation. So Karav Lagabe, Rabbi Alexandri, they went over to the fire to try and remove it. Amar, Asay bishvil kavod chachamim. You should get rid of the fire for the kavod chachamim, because there's a lot of chachamim who don't feel as special now that they see that he got the fire. So let's get rid of the fire. Lo ashkach, the fire stayed in place. Asay bishvil kavod avicha. You should do it for your father so that we can get you buried, because your father needs to bury you. Lo ashkach, the fire didn't go away. Asay bishvil kavod atzmacha. You should do this for yourself so that we can take care of your own body. We have a mitzvah to bury you. Istalek, then the fire went away. Again, another gemara that is Omer Dorsheni. Hamar Abaye la'afuke miman de lo kayam. This is only in regards to people who are la'afuke, to exclude miman de lo kayam, to someone who didn't keep halacha. That doesn't happen to people who didn't keep halacha. So then he gets a jab in the chest. Amar le Rav Ada bar Masna la'afuke mimar. Do you mean like you, Abaye? You're in violation of a halacha. De lo isle ma'ake le'igre. You don't have a makkah on your roof, which is, of course, the asisa makkah legagecha. We, of course, have a mitzvah in the Torah that if you have a flat roof, whatever the parameters are, you have to put up a wall. Below that was actually an incorrect jab. Why? Because mehava hava, he really did have one. Ve'ahishaita, was very windy out. Ve'ahishaita hu deshad yezika, there was a very strong wind. Last two pieces of the daf, and then we'll stop. Amar Reb Chanina, mipnei ma'in ba'alei rasan beBavel. Why is it that in the city of Bavel, nobody violated the rules of Hakaza? No one became a Ra'asan, because they eat beets, Vishos and Shechar Shel Hizmi, and they eat beer made from hops. Okay. There also are no lepers in Bavel. Why is that the case? They have three features. They eat beets, they drink beer, and they wash in the Euphrates. Again, all this whole page is weeks of research to really figure out exactly what's going on. We are going to glean whatever we can, and hopefully we'll have some time to do some research on that in the future. Hadran Allah Hamadir Ishto Baruch Hashem. We finished another parak, the seventh parak of Maseches Kesubos. We should come back to this day in 7.5 years. Wishing you all a beautiful night.